brother or sister of somebody who's hurt in the street, and we just want to give it to you, raw and uncut, so you get a different perspective from both sides.
Hello, this is a prepaid debit call from
Brandon Greene,
an inmate at the Lebanon Correctional Facility. To accept this call, press 0. To refuse this call, hang up or press 1. To prevent... This call is from a DRC correctional facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Utilization of an unapproved application and three-way calls to communicate are strictly prohibited and a violation of DRC policy. Thank you for using GTL. Thank you for using GTL.
Welcome to a special edition of Dem Streetz Podcast, Voices of the Underworld. I'm your host and executive producer, Brandon Greene. Today I'm proud to have someone who's not just a friend, but also my family joining us, straight out of Akron, Ohio's West Side. He's a 1994 Kenmore High School graduate, a devoted father, and a loving husband to his beautiful wife. In 2019, he founded the Freedom Block, which was my cousin, Mr. Greene Jr.
Good morning.
Oh, man, good morning, man. How you doing, man?
Doing well, pal. How you living, man?
Okay. Man, I'm living, man. I'm blessed, to say the least. Well, for some of our listeners, they may know our history, but for those who may not be familiar, you and I are related first cousins.
Yes, sir.
And it's an honor to have you here today. Well, this is a special edition, as I said, and with the election coming up, we felt the responsibility to speak to our duty to vote. I want to talk about voting and other COVID duties today. I also have a few questions. The time will go by quickly, but if you can share as much as you can, as quickly as you can, the listeners and I will be grateful.
Okay, that's what's up. Let's do it.
Okay, let's go. So, can you tell us why you started Freedom Block?
I started the Freedom Block to ensure that Black people, particularly formerly incarcerated Black people, had a voice in politics. We need to be building our own independent Black political power, and that's what the Freedom Block stands for. It's building Black political power, particularly with and for formerly incarcerated people.
Okay, cool. What are some of the most memorable achievements thus far of Freedom Block?
Memorable achievements. First of all, we register about 10,000 people every year. We hire about 30 people. Over 50% of our staff is formerly incarcerated. So we're ensuring that people that are formerly incarcerated get jobs. And then we just passed issue 10 2 years ago in Akron after a 25-year-old young Black man got killed by the police. We put on the ballot oversight board to ensure that citizens are overseeing the police actions, and we passed that with the highest voter turnout in Akron's history. So for 4 years, we've just been registering people, creating our own policies, fighting against this criminal justice system, fighting against bad housing policies, and uplifting the voices of directly impacted Black people, particularly formerly incarcerated Black people.
Okay, so for our listeners, is this just, in Akron, or just is it stretched in Northeast Ohio?
It's actually national. We are concentrated in Akron, Ohio, We have offices in Warren, Ohio, and Canton, Ohio, but we do a lot of work in Cleveland, Dayton, Mississippi, Columbus, Jackson, Mississippi, Atlanta. So we do a lot of work nationally through consulting and helping people develop programs, but we're concentrated and live in Northeast Ohio.
Okay, cool. Now, do you remember the first time you voted? And can you share with us about the election and candidate, how it felt to be a new voter?
The first time I voted is Obama's first run for president. That's when I was really getting into this work, really understanding how policy and bad policy landed me in prison. And through coming home and receiving more of that education and understanding and creating this organization, Obama was the first time I ever voted, and also gave people rights to the polls and made sure my whole family and all my friends voted. So what we're looking at this year is ensuring that people understand that this election, that most elections are not just about the president. That's all they talk about in the media, but actually the most important elections is your local elections. Like this year in Akron and throughout Northeast Ohio, we have a lot of judges running. Judges are the reason why we are in prison. We have prosecutors running. Prosecutors are the reason why we in prison. We have county execs running. They are the ones that control the budget for the whole county and what goes into services and infrastructure inside of the communities. So this year we're really, really focusing on local elections, our Congress, our county council, our sheriffs, and all those positions, with the understanding that yes, of course, you should vote for the president, but the other races impact your life on a daily basis and are actually more important than the presidential election.
Okay, cool. Does the historical context for black men in the U.S. influence their current voting behavior? Yeah. Nobody, particularly in politics, talks to us or cares to understand our plight. So we have been disengaged. That doesn't mean that we don't turn out. We turn out when our needs are being met on the ballot. And what we have to get better at is flipping that from a historical context and demanding something. We have to begin to come together and work through the process of what we need as men, what we need to be able to take care of our communities, what our communities need. And we have to form that band or that bond that allows for us to demand the things we need, like living wage, like universal health care. Those are all things that are germane to men, particularly black men. There's no, we are looked at as providers. So when you go to work and you're not able to make a living wage, that creates a ripple effect, starting with self-esteem, all the way to how you're perceived and looked at in the community. So we turn to alternative ways to make money. There's a lot of black men in prison, and less than 1% of them are actually bad people. Most people in prison are in prison because they try to take care of their families, or they lost their emotional capacities because they couldn't take care of their families. So we have to come together and have these honest conversations and begin to heal together, but also begin to put together a platform that allows for us to take care of our families and our community. Okay. How can voting affect issues that are particularly important to black communities, such as education, healthcare, and criminal justice reform?
Yeah, that's who the laws and the politicians is who controls those levers. So our voting is very important to that process. We just have to ensure that we are making the demand and helping to craft policies to ensure that we're not voting against our interests. So it's very important. We just have to get more involved in the crafting of that legislation.
Okay, so for the guys on the inside, of course, we can't vote, but education, what would you suggest? A guy that's, he's reading, he's politically in tune, but he can't vote. but what would you suggest that he talk to about his family, and peers who he's in communication with?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. First thing is get a full understanding of the issues in your hometown and nationally. Get a complete understanding of the three levels of government. Begin to read about the three levels of government, how they interact with each other, and how you can influence them. But also, once you get to your family and you give them that education and help them decide how and when they're going to vote, you also want to help them find organizations in that community that they're living in that's doing that work, that makes the research they're trying to do a little easier, that makes the guidance that they need a little easier. And then that connects them to the issues in the hometown. But then after that, you want to organize inside the prison, ensuring that everybody has this information, and then working with some outside organizations that your family has got in contact with to change the law. There is no reason why people in prison should not be voting. And that's just because there's not enough people advocating for that. So by advocating for it in there, hooking up with organizations outside of there to advocate for people being able to vote inside the prison is a huge feat that can be uptaken by people that is incarcerated at this time. Understanding that this all stems from the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says slavery is ended except for involuntary servitude, which is being convicted duty of a crime. So the 13th Amendment sets forth this precedent where people in prison can't vote. So the more people in prison advocate and work with outside organizations, we can begin to craft our legislation and hopefully get it passed, either through the ballot box or through our elected representatives, to ensure that every human being over 18 has the ability to vote, whether they're incarcerated or not. In jail, if you're in jail, you can vote right now. If you're in prison, you can't. If you're in jail, they won't provide the conditions for you to vote, but you are legally able to vote. So we just have to fight harder for these things as a collective. In order to do that, we have to sit down amongst one another and create a strategy and a plan, and then carry out that plan to ensure that every human being has the ability to vote.
Okay, well said. Now, I have one more question for now. As a felon, are you able to vote?
In some states you are. In Ohio, you are able to vote. In places like Florida, the law just got changed in 2018, but there's some hiccups in Congress. In Texas, you can't vote. So there are places where when you come home, you are able to vote. That information is not readily available to incarcerated people. They make it that way on purpose. So what you want to do is connect with your family and community organizations inside your community to see if you're able to vote. And if you are able to vote, then you want to ensure you get out and get registered and go vote. And if you're not, you also want to think about that strategy and that plan on how do you change that law in your state. What we must understand is that we are the people that we are looking for, that we are the ones that are in control and can change these laws. Too often, we wait for politicians to do it. You have the ability to begin designing a campaign plan while you're in prison. Get out of prison and then run for office. You need to be connected to community. You need to be connected to community organizations. But we actually control these levers. We are losing because we are having to participating in the right ways. We are losing because we haven't been paying attention. Lives get busy. Life begins to life. Minimum wage keeps us scrambling for money. Capitalism keeps us fighting each other. We have to get rid of all these outside noises and begin to communicate with each other to create a plan to free our people, whether they're locked up in prison or locked up in their community due to lack of wages, lack of health care, and lack of vision. We have to do that work together to save ourselves and change our communities.
Man, that's deep, man. Well, before we're gonna be on break pretty soon here for a moment, but like, what would you say to like when you go back in history, one thing that stick out to me most is the Selma, how those people, across the Pettis Bridge and all that they went through. Like, what would you say to people that actually, they haven't they don't vote, and considering how people fought and all that, people lost lives, what would you say to some of those people that are free?
Well, free is a tricky word. There's people in prison that are freer than people outside of prison. Freedom is a mind state. And if you're entrapped and ensnared with capitalism, and snarled with the things that are going on in this world, and not able to freely think and think outside the box and build communities around that thinking, then you're actually not free. I've been in prison. There are people that I've talked to in prison now that are a lot more free than people that are actually not locked up. So in order for us to understand our freedom, we have to understand that we have been miseducated. And then we re-educate ourselves, and that re-education leads us to the ultimate freedom that leads us to peace. But we have to defeat capitalism. We have to re-educate ourselves. We have to begin to sit down and have conversations and not competition that allows for us to truly, truly be free.
Okay, this is the Streetz Podcast, Voices of the Underworld. We'll be back momentarily with Mr. Raymond Greene Jr.
Thank you for using GTL. Hello, this is a prepaid debit call from
Brandon Greene.
This call is from a DRC correctional facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Application and three-way calls to communicate are strictly prohibited and a violation of DRC policy. Thank you for using GTL. Thank you for using GTL.
This is the Streetz Podcast, Voices of the Underworld, and we're back with Ray Greene Jr. What? Mr. Greene?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, what are the prominent issues or needing addressed in our hometown, and how can the community take initiative between elections?
Man, it's a lot. We got a housing crisis right now. We actually have the largest eviction rate in the state, the second largest homeless rate in the state. So people need to, if you're dealing with a slumlord or your family members is dealing with a slumlord or living in low-income housing that is unsuitable for human beings to be living in, like the Ericksons or the Wilbitz homes and the Park Lane Manors, they can come to our office at 848 West Exchange Street and fill out a complaint form, and then join our housing committee. Our housing committee meets every fourth Thursday from 6 to 7:30, and we begin to design plans around dealing with slumlords, building more affordable, more sanitary housing. We have a safety issue right now with our police. Our police is just a gang that's just beating up and killing citizens. So right now we are trying to strengthen the oversight board. So we have a safety meeting every third Wednesday from 6 to 7:30. They can come and get involved in. Or if they get pulled over by a police or a loved one gets pulled over or hurt by a police, they can come to our office, 848 West Exchange Street, and fill out a police complaint form that allows for us to move these issues to the oversight board. We have Block University that will be starting up in February. It's a 6-course class over 3 months, every second and fourth Saturday, that where we teach about the laws of the city, the laws of this land, 3 levels of government. Next year's topic is going to be Freedom Summer, how we build a contingency to free ourselves and to create policies that's more equitable. And then they can just stop by any one of our community events. We have events all this week around turning out the vote and just figure out where they fit in. A lot of things we do are initiated by the community, and we help put resources and training and leadership around those things that the community say we need. So go to our website, www.thefreedomblock.org, and just come get in where you fit in.
Okay. What specific barriers do you see that might prevent black men from voting, and how can these be addressed?
There's only really one barrier I see for black men voting, particularly in Ohio, and that's misinformation. And what we have to do as black men is begin to get more politically involved. You're going to hear this thing from me repeatedly when I'm talking about black men. We have to get into conversation and communication as opposed to competition. We have to stop looking at each other through these capitalistic lens. I'm either going to make money from off of you, or you are a threat to me making money. We are brought under a village mentality of our community, and in order for us to be in alignment with that, we must begin to sit down and have a conversation around these important issues. Our children are running around here fatherless because a lot of us are in prison, good, bad, or indifferent. We have to be able to pick up that slack. We have to be able to create programs in our community. Little League football has turned into a place where grown men are gambling on little kids' games. That cannot be the example that we set. So we have to begin to have conversation and more communication as opposed to competition that allows for us to figure out how policies are affecting us, what policies that we need that allows for us to not only exercise our right to vote, but build up a community that is receptive to the gains of black men and following the lead of black men.
Okay, well, what do you tell your children and other young people about community involvement, and do you talk with them about voting?
Yes, the main thing is I try to be an example. Having these same conversations I'm having with you all today, but more importantly, just listening. A lot of times as adults, we want to have all the answers, and we don't. And we have to be able to admit that we don't. And we have to be able to sit down and talk with our youth and our children like they are human beings, and not like they are some defenseless people that doesn't have a thought. And we sit down and have these conversations, and it allows us to not only open up and learn something about our kids and our youth, but it also allows for us to dispel any myths that they have learned, but expound on things that they have generally sat down and really, really put thought into, and help them accomplish those goals that are bigger than what our dreams is for our kids. We have to understand that they are human beings and that are worthy to be listened to. And then through that listening, allows for us to build community that's for everybody, and not just a dictatorship where we continue to tell our kids what to do when they obviously see us struggling and the advice that we're giving them is not even working for us. For me, it's all about sitting down and communicating and allowing for our youth to talk about their dreams and their fears, and allowing us to give them guidance and point them in the right direction, or saying, you know what, I don't know, let's research that together.
Okay, so, you just spoke of the youth. So for a young person, maybe their mom, sister, somebody may be listening to this, where's a place where, these type of conversations take place?
Yeah, find your community organization. See what's going on in your local NAACP or your local community organization that you often see on the news or often see at events. They are normally having these conversations. If you're in Ohio, the Freedom Block, we're constantly having these conversations. Come check us out. But you got to find that village that's trying to do the work of freeing and emancipating our people, and being in contact with those organizations and having these conversations.
Okay, and as a point of motivation, can you share examples of how voting has led to tangible improvements in the lives of black individuals or communities?
Yeah, like I said, in Akron, we have an oversight board that we just got implemented, and it's putting out recommendations for the police department that allows for us to hold the police department accountable. We have fought consistently for a living wage. Now most jobs in Ohio pay at least $15 an hour. We're asking for more now, but that has got jobs to begin to pay at least $15 an hour. We have just won the right to counsel in Akron, to where, you get evicted, you're normally going into court without a lawyer against a landlord who has a lawyer. Now that's no longer will happen. You are guaranteed the lawyer. If you're going into housing court for an eviction, you are guaranteed the lawyer now. It used to be the landlord could evict you, and even at the day of eviction, you had your money, they didn't have to accept it. We passed the pay to stay law. which says that now, even after day of eviction, if you got the money, the landlord must take that money and keep you in your house. We have passed policies to ensure that formerly incarcerated people can move directly into metropolitan housing upon getting out of prison, as opposed to having to wait 7 years. So those are some of the laws that we have changed that have directly impacted our people in Akron and Northeast Ohio.
Okay, so with every election, we hear this is the critical election. So why is this 2024 election so important?
Well, I think this election is critical because of the presidential election, and one of the people that's running for president is actually talking about enslaving black people again. It's talking about deporting 100 million immigrants. The humanity of this world is at stake in this election where we're talking about the presidents. But also it's important because whatever local laws that are on the ballot directly reflects your life. Every election is going to be important. I don't know if every election is life or death, but this one definitely is. But every election is important because it's your voice. And anytime you have a chance to speak, whether it's at a community meeting or at the ballot box, you should take that opportunity to speak. You should take the opportunity to stand on business and for you and your family. So for me, every election is important because I remember being locked up and not having a voice. And elections allow for my voice to be vocalized in one of the most civil ways possible.
Okay. Well, as we close, man, a lot you have definitely said a lot, gave a lot of information about different programs, what's going on in the communities, especially our black communities. But what is something that maybe you didn't address that you want to say to the listeners as we close?
Don't get caught up in capitalism. Capitalism only works when we have slaves. Wanting to be a millionaire, a billionaire, means that you have to oppress people. You have to pay people a minimum wage. You have to barely allow for people to exercise their humanity in your company. And what we actually need is community policies that allow for everybody to succeed. If everybody on my block is succeeding, I don't have to worry about nobody breaking in my house. So for me, the best advice to give everybody is understand what capitalism does. Understand that we need each other to survive. We are not competition. And once we get out the mindset of being capitalists and just looking for ways to take care of our family, we'll build communities that don't look the way they look, that allow for us to trust one another, love one another, and take care of each other. And that's what this world is really about. That's what America is really about. And we can't do that focusing on capitalism and focusing on getting rich.
Okay, so this is Dem Streetz Podcast, Voices of the Underworld, and as we addressed in the opening, this is a special edition, and we was glad to have you. To know you was real busy, so we appreciate you taking out your time to speak to us today and our listeners.
Anytime, fam. Anytime. Proud of you, man.
Thank you, man. We'll take care, and I will be in touch soon.
All right, that's what's up. Peace.
All right, peace.
Thank you for using GTL